Welcome everybody to the Gecko Pod. This is episode 88 of the Gecko Pod. We are a podcast for the gecko community where we talk about breeding geckos, particularly crested geckos, new cal geckos. Sometimes we veer off of that. We talk about the hobby in general. We also talk about the business aspects of it. Today, AJ, these are some of the things we've talked about before, right? But because there's like a new wave of breeders, we wanted to talk about some of the do's and don'ts of the hobby. You want to elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, I mean, something that we were talking about, I was mentioning a little bit on my live the other night, was just, I think just all the questions we get, Harry, from new breeders talking about kind of their challenges and things that they're going through. I think we've kind of gathered a little bit of the most common pitfalls, like the don'ts, and then also the do's.
Yeah.
Things that we can do to make our chances of success greater in this hobby. And then some of the most common pitfalls that we see, where we see people that are in the hobby for a year, 2 years, 3 years that burn out, or that just end up leaving the hobby due to frustrations in different areas. Some of the things that hopefully we can chat about today, just to be able to aid in new breeders' success in the coming years, is kind of my thought for this.
Right. And then, since, you and I and excuse me, and several people have experienced kind of this new wave of breeders because, Palm Street is a lot more accessible now. We do a lot of shows on Palm. We do weekly shows, right? You and I and several other people do as well, which is good in the sense that we've gotten a lot of new new buyers, and we've gotten a lot of questions.
Yeah.
And we realized that maybe now's another time to do an episode dedicated to do's and don'ts, where we've talked about a lot of these things before, but we'll kind of put it all into one episode so that we can be like, hey, send this to your new friend that's coming into the hobby, So
yeah, this is the one that we can link people. So when they ask us questions on Palm Street, we'll say, go watch episode 88, right?
What's funny is anytime I'm doing Palm Street, and I think maybe you do this too, people ask questions and, I'll answer them happily, but I'm always like, oh, go watch the Gecko Pod. We have 3 years. It's literally 3 years now, I think, since May of 2022.
Yeah, go watch. There's 500 hours. There's 500 hours of content for you. Go watch it. So.
We're only on episode 88. You'd think we'd be on more, but I think there's still so many hours, like you said, of content.
Yeah.
So plenty of content. 3 years worth.
Yep, and we're still here.
We're still kicking.
We will crack 100 episodes for sure.
I think we'll make 100 this year.
By the end of this year, we'll make 100. Yeah.
We have 12 episodes. We'll make it.
Yeah, we'll make it.
Oh my gosh. So yeah.
Getting started kind of in the vein of that, our first thing that we're going to talk about is just studying good information was a note that we made for ourselves. So what that looks like could be watching this podcast. It could be reading books on geckos in general. There's lots of books about reptiles, about geckos in general. You could read about the topography, the weather, the habitat of New Caledonia, if you want to understand that. You could read about genetics in general in humans, just in animals and reptiles and fish. You could read the genetics, the foundation genetics articles over with Little Monsters. There's just so much information to take in. So especially when we're in the early days of being in this hobby, and even if you're not in the early days, say if you've been in the hobby a long time and you've maybe gotten complacent and have kind of lost that learning instinct with your business and your hobby, I think it's going to be really important to engage your mind and kind of broaden your horizons on information that's out there.
Yeah, so, I mean, you and I are still always learning as well. And even this past week, AJ, like I sent you this picture. I'm like, is this a phantom? Like sometimes I still can't tell certain things because there are varying aspects of information that sometimes is just you can't know everything basically,
Yeah.
or even as we talk about anytime we have those more episodes with you and Anthony and Jess, and you guys are much more well versed than I am, and then you guys talk about this. Sometimes you guys don't always know the answers either, right? And yeah, so I think you just always have to be teachable. You always have to kind of learn in the hobby.
Yeah, and on the flip side of that coin, Harry, where should people probably not learn?
Facebook.
Yeah.
So that is a don't. All right, we'll say don't number one.
Don't learn the bulk of your information from Facebook groups.
It is funny. It is funny how many people come to me. I'm sure you as well, AJ, and be like, "Hey, I heard this from Facebook." I'm like, no, that's not correct. But don't listen to anything on Facebook. I mean, sometimes there's right information on Facebook, but it's so muddied with
it's 10%. It's 10% of
yeah. So I'm in 0 Facebook groups at this point. So
yeah,
I left them all like a long time ago.
Yeah, I mean, if you listen to what Facebook tells you to do, you'd be keeping your geckos in like a 120-gallon tank, planted, and you'd have 7 UVBs on top of it, and it's just not. I think there's just too much. There's too much potential for just misinformation in that space. So
yeah,
going to trusted resources. Go watch Tiki's videos on YouTube. Watch like what David has done. You could go watch like some of the stuff Robbie's done. Different things like this, like people that are more in the trenches of being a gecko breeder. I would go there for your starting point of resource for information.
Yeah, it is interesting. I do think a lot of Facebook group people that chat in there, it's not just that there may or may not be good information there. I think it's kind of the mentality of their take on stuff. They're very like aggressive, if that makes sense. If you do one thing wrong, they're going to cancel you. If you say this one thing wrong, then they say it. They're very aggressive with kind of their responses. And to me, that just is very discouraging when you're in those groups and you're like, hey, I heard this, but then these guys are saying this. I'm like, yeah, you can't just live on Facebook groups. If you're there just to kind of maybe try to glean some wisdom and how things operate, it's okay as long as you're not locked into the mentality of like that's canon. You have to
for sure. But I
have to expand.
I do feel like in the early stages, though, when you really don't know much, it's probably doing much more harm than good.
Yeah, I do agree with that. Yeah.
So
because you're somewhat naive when you're coming into the hobby and you're just taking in any information willy-nilly, right? And it's dangerous. So
yeah, I think building like when they talk about you hear this story all the time, like when they train counterfeit people that detect counterfeit money, they don't train them on counterfeit money. They just make them experts in real money, so that they know when they see counterfeit that's what it is. So I would say the first thing you should do is really get a good baseline of understanding the animals and care and the hobby. And then if you want to go into Facebook groups, at least you have somewhat of a base built where you kind of know what's false and not. So that you can at least weed through it like that.
Facebook groups are good for humor if you want to go in there and you feel well equipped so that you can go in and be like, okay, that's not right, but it's funny. Then you can share with your friends.
The problem is most people don't have that response. They have the argumentative response, which is not helpful. So we'll talk about that later.
Yeah. So we would advise to not engage, or at least be aware. At the very minimum, be aware that Facebook groups are not in general helpful.
Yeah, at least in the beginning stages.
Yes.
So yeah, for sure. Another do that we had mentioned to ourselves was understanding the costs of doing gecko business. So that, I think a lot of times when people are new in the hobby, the only cost they're thinking about is the cost of the animal when they buy it.
Mm-hmm.
So, oh, I spent $500 on this animal, or I spent, they're looking at their budget and their bank account, and then they're just thinking about animals. But just understanding costs of enclosures, of cage decor, of all of these different things. I mean, there's so many different costs associated. Your food bill, your cricket bill, your emergency fund for vet bills if needed. You're going to have to run more electricity in your house. Be prepared for that. Like, oh, do you have another $50, $75, $100 a month for electricity, in your budget? And all of these
how much
different
did
things.
you say?
I said 50, 75, $100. It could be, I mean, if you one space heater, Harry, probably jumps your bill like 25, $30.
No, hundreds, but don't live in California.
Okay, you're in California. You guys are just burning like Tesla batteries for your power.
Gosh. It's probably like $700 a month.
Stop.
I'm not even joking.
I know your context is different. Okay, guys, if you live in California, just don't breed geckos. That's the
don't live in California is the answer.
Anyway, sorry, keep going. Don't live in California. No.
$25. I'm like, wow, I would love that. I'm gonna run like 10 space heaters if it's $25.
So yeah, just understanding costs. I think that's a huge thing. I mean, what experience have you had with that, Harry? Do you feel like you you have to kind of learn the hard way, or did you have proper expectations of that going in?
Yeah, the cost is one of the biggest issues with geckos. And I get the temptation with buying geckos that are cheaper. The cost, so not like you said, not just the gecko costs, right? So let's say you budget 10, 20K, 50K even if you want to go big, maybe even more. That's fine. But then looking further in, you can be like, okay, once you produce babies, you need to buy racks. I spent thousands on racks, right? Yeah. You need to buy all the bins and the vents, thousands, right? I mean, I guess it depends on how big you go, and we'll talk about that later as well. But the food cost is crazy.
I mean, it's low compared to snakes, but
yes, it's low.
When you went from 5 geckos to a couple hundred geckos, it's a big difference.
Yeah, once you're spending like hundreds of dollars per week or per month on gecko food, then it begins to weigh on you. So yeah, the food cost, like you said, the cricket cost, a bag of gecko diet is like $100, right? A 4-pound bag or whatever. So it costs add up very quickly. To vend shows cost money, and then you're gonna probably lose money if you're new and you sell maybe one or two things you can't sell, and subscriptions to things, the costs pile up quickly, like really quickly. So you just have to be very careful of these things.
Yeah. I mean, I think what it is, I mean, it's a business like anything else. You have to understand costs and the kind of the time frame, the timeline to the point of profit, understanding how much you're basically going to have to spend before you profit, and being okay with that number and expecting those things. I know you went through that, Harry, like a couple years ago. I remember talking about, you're like, oh, I think if like at this point when these things happen, I'll be breaking even. And then from this point, I'll be this much in the green. We had those conversations, and I think that those things played out. It seemed like it.
Yeah.
What you expected. So
it is possible to profit, but and this was with kind of the COVID crash too, right? The COVID spike I bought here. Now it's not, I wouldn't say it's crashing, but it's dipping. And then, now I'm selling here. I'm selling at the lowest point. I bought at the highest, so selling at the lowest. And it's still possible to make profit. You just have to understand the timeline of it. For sure. So proper expectations of timeline is very important. You can't expect to make, and I do think that if you expect to make money first year, second year, like good profitable having a good profitable business, it's not gonna. I would say it's not gonna happen.
I don't think it's gonna happen unless you do some gray moral areas.
Unless you want to become just like a pure flipper, you know, and it's not possible to produce your own animals so quickly on that scale. I'll say, and be profitable, right? And just because I tried, and it takes a few years to get to the point where you can sell your own animals at profit, and it's just you have to.
A lot of it is because you have to put infrastructure in play that costs money. So say even if I'll just paint a theoretical thing, but say if you made $20,000 your second year in selling animals, you produce your first season, like say you bought all RTB animals and you bred them, and then you sold $20,000 worth of animals the second year, probably all of that money is going back into infrastructure, or at the very least, it should be.
Yeah, food, all that stuff.
So electricity. So all of that profit is going to be going straight back into the systems that are going to make it easier for you to manage your time, lidless rack systems, caging, the food to feed all the offspring you've produced and raised, all the shipping supplies and everything that you're going to be buying to ship the animals.
We even talk about shipping. Shipping is crazy.
Yeah. So I guess just managing expectations in regards to cost and timeline to profitability.
Right. So one thing I've been doing is that even though, we sell stuff and we, make money, we have an income, I'm just hoarding a little bit of that for the business because I know the cost associated with running the business. Right. So I'm trying to give myself runway. Whereas before I was chasing, right? I was just kind of like, okay, I made $1,000 this week. Okay, go straight back into buying all the food, shipping the animals. Now it's at a point where, okay, I'm starting to make more than I'm expensing, and now, but I'm still holding it. I'm not blowing it. Like, hey, let me go buy a new car. Some people do that, but we don't do that. Because we know the cost that it costs to run this thing, and to run it well. Like, depends on how you want to run it. So
yeah. So so a little bit of a flip side to that, Harry. What's our first con there on that list? I feel like this is something you're probably pretty passionate about.
What is
it? So buying low quality animals buying low quality animals and expecting to produce high quality offspring, basically kind of having unrealistic expectations of what you put into what you're going to get out.
Yes.
Do you see that being commonplace in today's kind of newer breeders? I do. I love to kind of.
It's definitely common. I do think though, AJ, that it depends on what type of breeder you want to be.
Yeah, I guess that's the thing you have to define first.
Yeah, but but let's stick with we'll get there. But let's stick with the don't. So if you've seen any of our Gecko Pods, you'll know that we always talk about quality over quantity. Even the people we interview, at the end, we're like, hey, what are some new breeder advice you would give? I would say like
75%.
Yeah, 75 or more. Probably say like, hey, quality over quantity, right? Start with a couple projects and just really focus on that. But with kind of the advent of Palm and reptile sellers on there, it's tempting.
It's tempting to go for more quantity and look past quality.
And this, AJ, okay, then this goes back into a related topic, is also, which we talked about in our live, is that a lot of new breeders don't know what quality is yet.
That's true.
So
that comes into point number one, which is study.
Study.
Yeah.
Study. I think it all comes down not just to study, but patience with that, because until you not just you study, but you also produce your own animals. And this is kind of where we're kind of we're kind of stuck, right? Because you do have to make some bad animals to understand good animals. I do somewhat believe that. Like you're gonna try to make good animals, obviously, and then you're gonna be like, this was not a good pairing.
But even, I mean, you could have like the most incredible looking pair.
Yes. Yeah.
And you pair them and they produce things. They do not do well together, even though like phenotypically they should.
Yeah. They'll produce some booty stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. But you might get like a pairing where it's your best male in that project to like a female you feel okay about. But for whatever reason, they do really well. And you kind of find a lane there and start to take it,
Yes.
And develop, like you'll see some of the most famous animals. Some of the most famous animals of the hobby didn't necessarily come from like the two nicest animals before that bred.
This is very true.
That is true, but at the same time, you don't often see incredible animals come from two
crappy animals.
Yeah.
Shouldn't say crappy. Sorry, I'm gonna get canceled.
He's gonna get canceled.
two less
subpar animals.
So we'll call it less of a breeder stock.
Yeah. So I think understanding in those early stages is hard because, and we've talked about this. I don't know if we talked about this on the pod, but we've talked about kind of in that early stage, you're so excited and you have this kind of like Pokemon, got to catch them all mentality. Like, oh, I don't have a Dalmatian yet. Oh, I don't have one of these. Oh, I don't have one of those. And in one point, I want to tell people not to do that because I know it's going to cause you to waste money and it's going to be a bunch of time to sell those animals when you realize that it's not what you want to do. But at the same time, a flip side to that, and you've mentioned this before, it's like, if you don't do that, you also don't know what you like.
Yeah, I mentioned this.
I could see both sides.
I mentioned this on my palm this past Monday, and I was talking about how, like what I just said, the majority of people we've interviewed said, "Oh, quality over quantity," and I said, "Well, Don said on one of Don's episodes, he's like variety, right?" And I said, "I don't agree with that necessarily." But I understand what he's saying is that you kind of figure out what you like and you kind of, if you like one thing over the other, then you go there, then you move the other stuff. He was mainly also saying like you have the tools, right? If you have a variety of stuff.
You have a little bit of an insurance policy where say if you only breed Dalmatians and Dalmatians go out of style for a couple years, maybe you also breed tricolors or whatever. You do something else that is different enough where all your eggs aren't in one basket.
Yeah, that's hard though. Like even with such a big collection that I have an above average collection size, and I would say that even spreading out for more than like 5 or 6 projects is kind of difficult.
Because you would probably know, and I would say this too, like, I think that to actually run a project well, like actually have like enough animals to really pick good holdbacks and have like a diverse project, you need like 20 to 30 animals in a single project. I feel like if you want to have a meaningful amount to sell, like after you pick holdbacks and some of them don't produce well that year, and it's like once all that's said and done, you need a good amount of animals. Okay, I'll say 15 or 20. I would say 15 or 20.
Yeah.
Like
10 to 20.
People don't even for me, I think about like say maybe one of my smallest projects, like Dark Phantoms. Okay, maybe I have 10 females. People probably don't even associate me with them because I don't produce enough of them. I'm not even like, if you were to ask, who should I buy Dark Phantom from? Nobody thinks to say me because I just don't have enough mass to be able to be known for them.
Yeah.
So,
this one is tough because on on one end, you want to hone in and focus a lot of your animals on one project because, like you said, sometimes you're going to pair a bunch of stuff and some things pan out and some things don't. You're not going to know until you pair those things.
Yeah.
And that's I experienced that, right? I paired this one animal, I thought it was going to be amazing, and it turned out just to be like kind of mid. I was like, oh, amazing parents, and it turned out mid. And then I paired it to some other stuff, some random cheaper female, and I was like, oh man, this stuff is really nice. So you're not going to know what pairs well unless you have more animals to pair that project to.
Yeah.
But then you're taking up space so that you won't be able to have as much variety.
Yeah.
So this one is tough, AJ, because like, what if you want to vend a show and then you have all just one type of animal? Is that doable? I think it's doable, but how detrimental do you think that is to kind of what you can provide?
I mean, I think for a show, it's that is not good. I think because shows are, at least modern shows are,
they like variety.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do think, AJ, though, you have the capacity, and because you built it out, you did the work, you can have variety. But I think of people that are like really niche down, like you have LGP who specialize in empty backs.
Yeah.
I don't think she's in the hobby anymore, right?
Or like Cresty Lords with like the
Halloweens. The Halloweens, yeah. And then, so you have, or MP Cresties, Megan, she's the Red Dowels, and she makes really nice stuff, but she's like honed in on there. Or Kenny Cold Blooded, is he still selling? No. I know he's still around.
No, I don't think he's
still around, but yeah, but things like that where you have like a very niche project, so it's doable, but it does pigeonhole you where people aren't going to come to you for.
Well, it depends.
Phantoms,
And this is going to be the reoccurring theme in all of this. It depends on what your goal is and what kind of a business you want to run. Do you want to make this your career? Do you want to sell 100 geckos a year to pay for your hobby? Is this purely fun and you just want to have a hobby that you put money in but don't really expect any money out? Any of those things, you have to kind of define what your goal is, and that will steer a lot of these decisions we're talking about.
Right.
Because a lot of these things don't even apply if you don't want to run a business. I think what we're talking about here, though, is that people that do want to run a business. So,
yeah.
So you have to define that.
Yeah, that's very true. Like some people just want to enjoy it, and even if they're losing money a little bit, that they're okay with it because they're having fun with it, and that's something probably different than what we're talking about in terms of how to be profitable, how to grow, not just monetarily, but also in terms of your, I guess, kind of your place in the hobby, where people will kind of know you, right? And know you for what you make, what you bring.
Yeah. So just kind of defining what destiny you're aiming for.
Yeah. And there's absolutely nothing wrong if you wanted to stay low key and just enjoy the hobby without being in the spotlight of things. Totally okay. Sure. I think a lot of people are actually like that, and that's totally okay.
Yeah, like I remember I was talking to Rich from Reptile Basics, and he was saying, he's like, I think there would be a lot more people that would be a lot less people that would be upset or disappointed if they realize that for most people, if your hobby pays for itself and you get to take like a little vacation once a year, if it's like that level, you're like you're winning,
Yeah.
If your hobby,
that's such a good point.
Most people's hobbies are just a hole that they dump money into and they never break even. So if you can break even and go on a little weekend getaway, like you're winning. So
absolutely.
I think
no stress.
A lot of people probably want that to be the level they want to be at.
I think the stress comes when you're too involved. 100%.
Yeah.
You get the highlights of being very involved, but you also get a lot of the lowlights of just like, it's just you're stressed out taking care of all the animals, trying to make a buck. It's a different mentality. But if you're here just trying to make, I'll say this, it's not that hard to make $5,000 a year. selling geckos, you know, to get to that
Yeah.
point. You
Yeah.
know? And that's a vacation. That's a family vacation right there.
Yeah.
And you can totally do that. It's very doable.
But then a lot of that goes back to understanding costs too.
Yeah.
Because it's very
and the timeline.
Get out of control with your costs, you know. So
yes, yeah. It's not like an easy $5,000. Let's say that.
Yeah.
And it's not a quick $5,000. It takes time to get there.
So another do that
Yeah.
we have in this kind of comes in line with that cost thing, which is as much as you can trying to do your caging and enclosures well early on. I'm not going to say the first time, because I think a lot of times when people, the very first animals they buy, they don't have the information to know. They just have to make it work for a month, 2 months, 6 months. But I think early on, kind of doing your research on what the standard caging people use is and the pros and cons of it, and investing in good enclosures. And nowadays, I feel like now it's cheaper and more accessible than ever to get into like good enclosures.
Yes.
Especially with the container store stuff.
Yes. Yeah. I remember pretty early on, I was using those $1.50 Sterilite bins from Target and just drilling holes in them. And I had quite a bit of them. I had probably like 50 to 75 of them just stacked up, lidded.
Yeah.
And I was okay with them. And then I remember having this conversation with you. I don't know if you remember, but I'm like, man, like, I think I'm going to keep growing. Should I get some racks? And what type of bin should I get? And then you're like, well, I rack them up and I use these container store bins with vents. And then I was like, oh man, but if I get them, they're expensive because it's like $250. It's $250 for a container store bin at that time. And the vents are also like $250 plus, right? So that's $5 a bin. Plus you got to buy the racks. And I was like, and I remember sitting down, I'm like, this is going to be expensive. But then I bit the bullet. I got rid of majority of my Target Sterilite bins.
Oh, if you watch early Gecko Pod episodes, they would have been behind you there.
Oh yeah, that's right. Right here. Here. I just had them stacked up and on the floor too, you know?
Yeah. But and then I will say, I remember talking to Andrew about it a lot of years ago, Andrew Gilpin. And I remember, I don't know if he told me or if it was just like we came to the same rationality, but it was like back at that time, say like the total cost for I think back at that time, things were cheaper, obviously 15 years ago or whatever, but it was like, okay, the cost of a slot in a rack system. So like, say like there's 20 slots in a rack and it costs X dollars. So that plus the vent plus the bin, say it was like $12. You know, I remember his or our rationale, I can't remember. I think he said it to me was, AJ, that's one gecko. That's one wholesale gecko. Say you sold the cheapest wholesale gecko ever. You sold one gecko out of that bin. It's paid for.
Yeah.
And that helped lighten the the mental load on it. It's like, I'm not looking at the bill of the entire thing necessarily. I'm thinking about all I have to do is sell one gecko for the cheapest price a gecko is sold for. And it will pay for that slot and I have it forever. You know, so understanding that mentality, I was like, okay, it does make sense to invest in the right things then.
Yeah,
if you think about it that way.
I will say, yes, I agree with that. I will say though, when you're scrapping early on, and I scrapped, right? It was painful to buy some of these things when you're making zero money, right? From the hobby.
But then it comes into, if that's the place you're in, then what you're putting in is sweat equity. Yeah, so what you're putting in is time. So say you have 200 shoe boxes, it would take you 2 hours to feed them if you're doing it without lids. You know, if you had them if you had them with lids, say if you had them without lids, it'd take you half an hour. So what you're paying that money for is that 3 days a week, you're saving yourself an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And if you have time, but you don't have funds, that's not the end of the world. But just understanding you're basically, that's the trade-off you're making is your time or funds. That's basically, and we've talked about that in the past of, do you want to go, do you have time or do you have funds? And a lot of that kind of depends on what things you can do when,
Yeah.
So
Yes. Yeah, but yeah, taking that information and then eventually biting the bullet and doing the racks and investing in the 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 container bins, the vents. And I do see some trends with that, AJ. I think
it's trending in the right direction.
A lot more people have been buying like Container Store, like the rack systems and the bins, and then some of your vents that you just put out, or other vents. You can totally print out your vents too, and that's fine. It just has a different feel and vibe. So you can do that, but yeah, doing that paid off. I don't regret it at all, because of where it's brought me in terms of my growth stages. So I will say though that I don't know. What do you think about this, AJ? Like right off the bat, do you buy racks and
I'd say no.
Okay. So,
but I would say
a progression.
There's a tipping point though where I feel like you need to.
Yeah,
I'd say you could probably get away with not doing racks in the first season of production.
Yes, agreed. I agree with this. Yeah.
I think in that first season of production, though, if you have excess funds after your expenses for your food and your shipping and everything you do, the next thing I'd probably put money towards, if you don't already have a good camera, is racks. I'd say that's the next thing I do. If I had camera gear and I had money left over, I'm putting it at racks.
Yeah. The racks are a big thing. I spend a lot of money on just racks and containers. And
one thing I would say though is something that you could do, and I wish that I did do this. Basically, if you understand the bin you're going to use in your racks, so say it's the 6-quart shoebox from Container Store.
Yeah.
Do yourself a favor and buy and install vents in those and have them lidded in that first season. But then when time comes, you can buy your racks. All you do is take the lid off and slide it in. And then you don't have to re-drill and throw away all the bins you just bought and do all that work to switch bins, because most of these rack companies, they don't make racks for 7 different bin styles. Oh, mine are from Dollar General. Okay, well, too bad, we won't make it for you.
Yeah, unless you custom bin it, which is fine, like custom rack it, which is fine. But then just get the container bins. They're the way that the dimensions are. They're so much
for paper towel. It's perfect for paper towel.
Perfect for paper towels, and they're more square as opposed to kind of like that V shape where you don't
clean them.
It's just waste space,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So moral of the story, like that's an easy decision to make, where it's like they're pretty much the same price as everything else. Just buy the right bin the first time.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. So that is a good progression. You just buy the container bins from the start, even if you lid them, and then rack them. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. I'll just go to Target, buy the Sterilite bins for $1.50.
But now I feel like they're almost that price at Container Store.
Yeah,
the shoeboxes have gone down.
I think as they started veering towards bankruptcy, then they lowered their prices on the shoe bin, and then they bumped it back up. If you've been tracking with, and this is another topic, if you've been tracking with Container Store, like it's been wild, some of these prices, and every month they have the same deal, and they're like, oh, last days of the sale, and then next week it's the same exact sale. I'm like, come on, guys, just lower your freaking prices.
Everything is on sale at this point.
I mean, just freaking lower your prices. Come on, Container Store, what the heck?
All right.
Sorry. All right. What else? What's next? What's a don't? What's a not to do?
The next thing we have is not feeding your animals well.
Yeah, we've talked about this.
And by that comes into understanding costs. And what we're talking about is feeding insects consistently. So especially if you're buying young geckos and you're raising them, feeding insects is very important in their growth rate, in their overall health, in their reaching a sexual maturity in a timely manner. so that you can breed them, you know,
Yeah.
and because everybody wants their animals to reach the point where they're at sexual maturity and can breed. So I think just prioritizing funds and investment towards feeding your animals well, the inputs into your animal is very important. And not trying to cut cost there. If you're going to cut cost somewhere, don't do it there. Is kind of my advice, at least.
Yeah. It's funny because I agree with you, but I know the pain point of paying for geckos. I'm not sorry, paying for crickets. Yeah, it's this one is I agree that you should and feed crickets consistently. Is there a variation of doing that? Because you and I feed crickets what, twice a week?
Yeah.
Is it passable if you feed it once a week? I think so.
For
right?
sure.
Okay.
I mean, most people don't even do it once a week.
Some people do like once every other week.
Even if
or when they get it.
even if it's that you feed crickets 3 times a month or something like that, I think just prioritizing having a schedule and keeping it.
Yeah.
I think it's very easy to get complacent and feed diet alone, and then wonder why your geckos don't grow. So it's really important to feed insects.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Yeah, man, just the cost of crickets, and this is a pain point in our hobby, is that finding crickets that will show up alive that don't cost an arm and a leg, because people need to overnight ship these things, So if you're local to a cricket farm and you can just go pick it up, or it's like really cheap to get to you, like you're fortunate. Majority of us have to overnight ship it or 2-day ship it, and the risk of it coming dead and then missing a feeding, and then you're paying like such expensive prices for shipping. Yeah, it's a huge pain point, I think, in our hobby. But yes, if you can find like a good source and a good system where like, okay, I'm just going to bite the bullet, I'm going to pay the X amount of dollars per week to get crickets in and to feed it, I think that's, I would take priority.
And I think, and I'm hoping, similar to like some of these things that have happened, Harry, like with kind of the shakeup in shipping and some of the shakeups happening in the food space and stuff, I'm hoping that there's going to be at some point a shakeup in the insect space.
Yes,
is my hope.
Yes. So I mean, and we can kind of like hint at certain things, like we're trying to fix some of those spaces.
Yeah.
You and I, with diet and shipping, and then it'd be cool if someone can. I don't know if there's a solution for the cricket thing though. This one is hard. Who can? Who can?
But it doesn't necessarily mean the solution has to be, just selling cheaper crickets. I know that somebody will be in the comments like dubia roaches, red runner roaches.
Yeah, we tried all this.
And I don't think they're viable solutions for most. Maybe for some, but you did the dubia thing.
I did. I have a colony still. Yeah.
But why don't you use them anymore?
It's just time consuming. I think it really depends on the size too. A lot of things it depends on what type of breeder you are too. So
yeah. So so moral of the story: prioritize spend on the inputs into the animal. Food, good food. I mean, that's our main input into the animals is food and supplements. So
is there, AJ, is it possible? We talked about this a little bit. We touched on it. Is it possible to create a diet? And people have asked us before too, where you don't have to feed crickets.
I'd say yes, it's possible.
We just haven't figured it out yet.
TBD. I think it's possible. I think that it's one of those things that is not easy.
Yeah. I mean, if somebody it
would have been done already.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, if you or somebody else like figures it out, that would be a huge unlock in the hobby. Like, I feel like you don't have to buy any more crickets,
Yeah.
And it would be a game changer. So
yeah.
So hopefully you figure it out. Right?
Yeah, I'll try.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that'd be good. But yeah, I agree. I don't, and I said this on my palm on Monday when we were talking about feeding. I was pretty set on saying that if you don't feed live crickets, it's and you only feed diet, it's not possible at this point to grow your geckos at the same rate. Would you
No.
agree with that?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. It's
Your
not
animals
possible.
will
We've
not grow at
tried.
the same rate. Your animal, yeah. Your animals will grow at like a third of the rate with no insects.
And we've seen this like firsthand. We've seen animals we bought. We've seen other people that have showed us geckos that they bought of what age they are, and we're like
2 years old and they're 15 grams or 17 grams.
Yeah. So you have to feed live crickets if you want to grow it. And I keep saying at a proper growth rate. And some people might disagree with that in terms of the
I could understand somebody disagreeing with maybe feeding insects 3 times a week, but I don't think anyone has a point to say feeding insects once a week is harmful to your animal.
Yeah. So I think that's great. So if you feel the pressure that it's too expensive to feed twice a week, feed once a week. If it's too expensive, still feed
twice a month.
Twice a month. Just like if it's like cricket month, like if it's cricket day on a twice a month feeding, it's like hammer it.
Yeah, you would normally give them 5, let them gorge, give them 7.
Go ham. It's like a steak meal once, a fancy steak meal on your birthday.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah, but feed crickets. Yeah, feed crickets. I agree.
Yeah.
Okay. What's a don't? What's a don't?
That was a don't.
Oh, sorry. Don't not feed.
Yeah. Bad. Not feeding.
Yeah. What's a good?
The next one that I had listed was photography. I would say studying photography, studying how to take good photos of your animals, and that could mean using your cell phone. That could mean using a camera. It could mean shooting photos outside. It could be using a light box. But I think just learning the basic functions of photography, understanding light and white balance, your ISO, your aperture, your f-stop, all of these different things will help you in the long run. Because I always say, or I always think at least, that this business it's almost half of what you need to be good at is photo and video, because that's the way we showcase our animals to our customers. So
I do.
So that's important.
I do think a lot of people get away with it with just camera pictures, and majority of my stuff at this point is like
phone pictures. You mean?
Yeah, phone pictures. But to have the ability to take a picture, with the camera, which you've taught me how to do it, basically, right? What to get, how to shoot, what settings to do, and I've learned that from you. Like the ability to have that to provide breeder pictures or update your website if you're doing like a high-end drop and you're able to do that, I think it's huge. So I think it's very important. But if it's like a day-to-day IG post or IG story, like feel free to use your camera just to show a few things. That's totally okay. I do that all the time.
Your phone.
My phone, yes. So majority of my stuff is that, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I think that all of these things that we use are tools, whether it's your phone or it's a camera or whatever you're using, it's just a tool for a certain job. So there's no shame in using a phone versus using a camera. I think that as we step up how serious we are in the business, though, our investment in our photos and in our knowledge of photography should also increase.
Yeah. I got mine right here. I always have it
I don't have a camera within reach of me other than the one that I'm looking into right now.
Yeah. So this one I got from your recommendation. It's like a little older model. I got it used from Marketplace. Sony A7 III with a Tamron 28 to 75 millimeter. It's a good standard basic stuff, and it's been great. And I think it's definitely expensive, but it's worth the investment if you're gonna do this like seriously. Yeah.
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 So do prioritize your photography.
Agreed.
This next one's for you, Harry.
I wrote down, I'm guilty of this as well, but I wrote down, don't be an asshole. I just said it. Don't be an asshole. Stay teachable. Stay as humble. You know, it's hard because, you know, AJ and I will sometimes also talk like we know, and sometimes we do know, but sometimes we can be guilty of talking in a sense where we have like this air about us, and I think we've got to catch ourselves sometimes, you know. So I think we do want to share information in a way that is helpful and we are confident about, but we also don't want to be extremely pushy about certain things because we know that we don't know everything.
Yeah, for sure.
So the negative perspective on this is like just kind of being a know-it-all, and this is kind of a catch-all. Don't be an asshole is like being a know-it-all and just being kind of mean, and you know, customer service is bad. You know, you're very
you're going on Facebook groups telling everybody they're an idiot and don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, one of the biggest pet peeves is like when people talk to you or I, or you know, just to others like they know, and then we've been in the hobby like 5 minutes. It's like so obvious. It's like, dude, you just got in the hobby and you're talking like, you know, like just chill. Like, no, you can't pair lilies together. You know, it's like and it's I get it. We're learning. It's so I don't mind that you don't know that you can't pair that, but like don't talk like you know. If that makes sense. You know?
It's just being humble and being aware of what kind of your knowledge level, and just being humble and continuing to be teachable and learn. For sure.
Yeah, and so it's totally okay to ask questions. Like I don't. It's you know, because that was me even now. I ask a lot of questions. Just ask a lot of questions and be receptive to, if you're going to ask, not even us, if you ask other breeders or more experienced folks like questions, like be receptive to their answers. Whether or not you think it's off, just be like, okay, I thought it was this, but that's a good perspective. You know, I think it's about your posture and attitude towards how you receive information. Right. Like a lot of people will tell me stuff that I don't agree with. I'm like, okay, that's a good perspective. You know, like I'm not going to be an asshole about it. You know, I'm just gonna be like, cool. Like, but even though I know that I'm going to do things one way, even though I'm pretty confident about certain information here, if people tell me certain things, I'm like, okay, that's good to know. Unless it's like very wrong, then I'll be like, actually, that's not right. You can't pair lilies together.
Yeah.
You can't pair a frap and a lily together. A frap is a lily.
Why not, Harry? I'm trying to unlock some pieds. Let me do it.
That's how Korea does it. No, I'm kidding. I'm totally joking. But yeah, I mean, that's how the Lucy's were made. Yeah, it's just one of those things where you just have to chill, you know, just be like, it's okay. It's okay to not know. Seriously. Like you can be done with your comments and you can say certain things, but when you ask, if you ask people questions, like don't disagree with them immediately, you know. That's just like, all right, if you know it all, don't ask us then, you know. Like
and I mean, I think even on the podcast here, we try to do that where it's like people ask, like in the Q&A, I've had multiple people like, how does, like, is red recessive? Somebody will ask, and I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
There's still a debate about it, right?
Yeah. Or like, is the Lucy a cap? I'm like, maybe. I don't know.
Could be related. Yeah.
You know?
I mean, and we're wrong sometimes. Sometimes we'll be like, oh, phantom is recessive, right? We've said that earlier on. And then
I still think we're right about
that. And then, but you know, it's just one of those things where like there's enough, like maybe I don't know how legitimate it is. Sometimes there's enough legitimate like background to be like maybe, right? And then that's when you be like maybe, even though if you're confident about certain things.
Or that's the premise we're operating under until other evidence is provided.
Oh, I got a good example, AJ, that you just told me recently. For the longest time, we thought that pinworms came from crickets. So when geckos ate crickets, then like, oh, you know, I don't feed my geckos crickets because it gives them pinworms. And then you told me that might not be true, right? Can Can you quickly share about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I was talking with Andrew Gilpin about it, because we've always talked about that, and like, do these animals need to be treated? If they do have pinworms, where are they coming from? Well, it's inevitable, because people say they came from crickets. You know, all pinworms come from crickets. Well, I sent you that study because Andrew and I were talking about it. I found it.
Yeah.
There was a study that was conducted where they basically bought crickets from 5 of the largest cricket producers in the US and parasite tested them, and none of them had pinworms. You know, so they basically concluded, if these 5 places the crickets don't have pinworms, that's probably not a primary source of where pinworms are coming from in basically in reptile trade. So basically it's most likely animal to animal transmission back to either back to original imported animals or cross contamination from other animals in a building that had them, from another species, things like that. So it's one of those things where it's like, it's people just say it's from the crickets, from the crickets.
Yeah,
from the crickets.
That's because people heard that. Even we believe that, you know?
Yeah, I think so, because I wasn't aware of this evidence. And then, you know, if you actually do some research, you can find studies. And if you talk to people that are knowledgeable on the subject, like Andrew talks to a buddy of his that's like arguably probably one of the most prominent vets in the reptile industry. So it's interesting. You know, just keeping an open mind to those things and understanding. Just being teachable, for sure.
Being teachable. And then when you're wrong, just be like, I was wrong. Like, you know, like I'm still learning. So rather than doubling down on things we're wrong about, which is a lot of people, including us sometimes, probably, we just don't know yet.
Well, then if somebody calls you out as that, then be willing to be like, you're right. Yep, I was wrong.
It is difficult. I'll say this, and it's difficult when newer people in the hobby, again, like talk like they know. I don't mind confidence, but if you talk like you don't know, and then you don't listen to, you know, other breeders, not just myself, but other breeders, like give information, and you can kind of tell like there's a little bit of arrogance with some of the newer breeders. Then you'd be like, okay, it not only is that detrimental to you on multiple levels, it's detrimental to you in that people aren't going to talk to you as much anymore, and also you're kind of holding yourself out so that you're not going to learn as much.
You're almost kind of like closing the door on your mind of what you're willing to learn.
Not only are you not teachable on your own, but other people aren't going to want to teach you because you are a know-it-all.
So, well, I'm not even going to talk to this guy if he's already got his mind made up. Why would I even talk to you?
Don't, if you're set on how certain things work, that don't ask me any questions.
I'm gonna start messaging you, Harry. We have to breed lilies together. That's the only way to get all these cool new morphs.
Don't engage. Like, I just don't want to engage with people that have their mind set already, absolutely set, and that's it, you know. And confidence is one thing, arrogance is another, right? And so I think just got to be careful of that. So don't be that. Just be teachable, learn, be confident, yes, but be teachable for sure, and just be chill. It's not super serious. We just got to chill, you know. Okay, what's a positive, AJ? What's the next positive we have?
This was one that you had written, looking at pictures of experienced breeders' animals and how they pair them, and learning from that. Can you kind of elaborate on that?
So it's just another aspect of learning. This kind of goes with, you know, study good information. And so we'll touch on this really briefly just because we kind of talked about it. You know, studying good information, learning genetics, this is lumped into there, where you're looking at how certain breeders operate. Like, somebody look at how AJ operates, or it doesn't have to be me or AJ. You could look at how this person operates, and like how their animal and their projects play out and pan out, and be like, wow, that's an awesome animal. How can I learn from that? You know, and you know, you can talk to them. You can find other breeders with various similar projects that are high quality, a quality that you like, and then you just ask them questions. And even if you're looking from afar in terms of how they sell, how they interact with their customers, I look at all of that stuff still. I'll be like, I would do business with this person because they seem like a good person. Like they're not just. There's always a little bit of selfishness to each person, but like it's the degree of like, okay, this person is just trying to flip and is kind of like dirty to their customers. I don't. People are looking. Everybody sees that, and I feel like if you want to be more well received and you want to have a business that's profitable and a business that where you can grow in your socials, I do think you have to find people to
basically role models to kind of look to or mirror in ways.
And I'm not saying you have to kiss ass. Like I don't like kissing ass, but it's more about like, oh, this person, I really like this person and I like how they operate. And I have a handful of people like that I don't talk to all the time.
But you like looking at their business. Like I think I think, I'll give like a mini shout out. Like you and I have talked about, and he'll probably appreciate this shout out, but like Vicente Clutchified Morphs. I always see like his photos and his morph market. I'm like, this guy's doing a good job. Like
he's a humble dude, man.
I think about him. I think about Preston, Super Yamori. Like there's a bunch of people where I'm like, even though they're like on the newer end, I'm like, they're doing a really good job.
Yeah.
So
I mean, they're not without kind of their customer issues, and they deal with it, and it's fine. And I think they're doing a good job, but just I think they're just not very flash. They have good stuff, and they know it. Let your business operations and your animals show it. You don't have to hype out things unnecessarily and just kind of be like this loudmouth. I mean, maybe that's part of the personality thing too, AJ, is that some people are that way, and I think that's okay. Just play to your strengths. But I think in general, a lot of people do it poorly.
Yeah.
A lot of people do it well too, but you got to figure out that balance in terms of like who do you think does it well, who do you think kind of is kind of a similar personality type and strengths, and then just kind of learn from them. I think that's
what business do you like? Do you like the vibe of is something you jive with? Because like I guarantee I know there's people that like we're not their flavor.
Sure.
They don't like the way that we do things. There's people that like the businesses you're talking about that are a little bit more like arrogant and like things like that, where that's not our flavor. But some of those guys still do well, guys and girls, so it's one of those things where I think what you have to do is you have to find your lane and you have to do your lane well. I think is,
and then how you do things will always be similar to how a handful of other people do things, and you don't have to make it a competition. Just learn from them. It's to me it's very simple.
Draw inspiration from people you admire.
Just know that you have good product, and you know that you have good business, and just continue to build on it. And you don't have to compete with people that are similar to you. So
it's good.
Want to hit on a
I feel like we need to do a different one before this one.
Are we ending with this? Okay, let's do this. So
we need some more
positivity.
I'm feeling weighed down.
All right, we'll get to that. Okay, do this one.
So
AJ and I have a document we wrote it.
Yeah, a con that we wrote was a thing that could kind of get could get you in trouble in the early stages is selling too early. Yes. And by what we mean to that in that way, and we went, this is probably the thing we went back and forth on the most, Harry, is like, how do we portray this? And do we agree on this? The first point I had written was vending shows too early, which was, in my mind, when I see people at shows and they've got like 3 animals on the table and they're not even animals they produced and they're there. And at first I was like, that's bad. Don't do that. And then we started talking more about, well, it is good. It is good to
exposure.
expose not necessarily your business, but yourself to other people in your area. And where we kind of landed on was, I do feel like in the early days, instead of vending, say, too early, because who you're going to get the chance to talk to is probably not the people you should be talking to. What we kind of came to the thought on is, in those early days, I would prioritize getting to know fellow breeders in your area. And if you're standing at the table at the show, you don't get to talk to them because you're standing at your booth and they're standing at theirs. I don't know if it was me, even at this last, I went to that Charlotte All-American show and just walked around, and it was really nice to like, oh, I got to talk to people and get to know some people that are from around here that I've never met before.
Did you go with Austin?
Yeah. Me and Austin went and walked around, but it's like, oh, I got to see like Kaiju Cresties. They have bought a bunch of animals from me, but I've never got to see their animals at their booth. And so I got to do that, which was super fun. Good to see them. And it was just, I think that that's a really valuable thing in the early days, is to be able to get to know and be known by the fellow breeders in your area.
Yeah.
I think that's really,
really
valuable. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah.
Prioritizing that instead of, getting your brand out. Like, you'd be better getting your brand out by going and talking with fellow breeders in your area instead of handing out business cards if you have nothing for sale.
Yeah.
And
we'll talk about this in a little bit, but it goes back to like being patient. And we'll touch on that later. But yeah, I agree that initial stages, go to the shows, go to all your local shows, see who's vending, look up their Instagram, look up their websites, see how long they've been in the hobby, and then message them and message them post, even if you're too shy to talk to them, and be like, hey, I saw you vending at the show. It's really good to see you. Just wanted to introduce myself. I think when people do that, like it's actually, I think that's awesome. Like when people message me those things, I'm like, oh, that's really sweet. And then you get to, you see their name, and then the more they kind of ping you and message you, you'd be like, oh, okay, yeah. And you kind of begin to build, a relationship in that way. And I think you'll quickly find and see which breeders care to connect and which don't. And just don't care about the ones that don't want to connect. Like, to me, it's really that simple. I messaged a ton of people earlier on, and people that didn't want to chat or talk to me, I just stopped talking to them. And and I didn't take it personal. It's just that's not their style. But the people that continue to connect with me, then I build relationships with them. And so I would say that, if you vend too early and you're just immediately trying to like get your brand out there or sell animals and get exposure in that way, I think it can be detrimental, because then you're just not focused on building breeder relationships versus you're just trying to build customer. There's you can't.
Which, you don't. The reality is, most of the people that buy animals are other breeders. So
yes, that is going to be your some of your first animal sales is good.
Other breeders,
yeah. But obviously, you can sell to a lot of non-breeders, a lot of pet stuff at shows, and that's fine too. But it goes back to, it depends on what type of breeder you want to be. Do you want to be more involved in kind of this overall hobby where a majority of people, or do you just want to stay at the local show level, which is totally okay?
You could not have an Instagram or socials or a website, and you could show up to the local shows, and that's all you do.
Yeah, and it's interesting because a good example is like anytime I go to the local shows here in the Bay Area, in California, then there are a lot of breeders that are always there, but they're not big on socials, and I respect that. They're just not that type to be in the broader spectrum of the hobby. They just want to vend local shows. So it really depends on if you want to do that, or if you want to be bigger and be more known online and throughout the country, I guess.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yep. Yeah. So be patient, I guess. Be patient with developing your relationships first.
Okay. this is where we're at here is this.
Yeah.
Our next spot is,
Yeah.
and we talked a little bit about this, but just kind of like, book ending this, having proper expectations of timeline, profitability and growth, both monetarily and in your socials. So like we talked about earlier, there's costs and there's time that goes with this. There's been a theme of cost, time, patience, humbleness, and then this is kind of the culmination of that, which is managing expectations of timelines of when you will hit maybe milestones you have in your head.
Yeah.
And I know that like we've talked about it. We've heard feedback from other people that got in similar times as you, Harry. And a lot of people, it seems like the number they say often is 4 to 5 years is where they feel like they really kind of like hit their stride. And they're like, okay, I'm breeding all my own animals I've produced. A lot of, the animals I'm breeding, I produced, and they have kind of their projects are taking form. Yeah. People are buying the animals they're producing and they're interested in them. They're having people engage with them on socials and they're feeling good about it. It seems like it does take time. It's, that's not going to happen in 6 months.
Yeah.
Or a year, so just having proper expectations of that.
Yeah. I remember early on when we were doing the podcast and a few breeders gave the advice of like, having, working while you're building out this side hustle. Right. And it sounds like common sense, but sometimes it's not. But I think making sure that you have supplemental income and in the meantime, figuring out if this is something you want to do and pursue on a more full-time level, right? Or even let's say 75% level, it's still somewhat of a side
or
hustle
a half and half
half and half. And I think the hybrid is probably the best way to go. But I do think it's important to have extra income so that you can feel it out in the first 2 to 3 years. Whereas some people will just jump in the hobby only for a few months and then they're like all in. And I get it because I was there too. But I also had backup, meaning I saved a lot of money before jumping into this hobby. So I think it's important to, like you said, understand that the timeline could be 4 years to profitability, 5 years. I remember, and I bring this up often, the salesman, Kyle at Gecko days, he's like, yeah, we literally didn't turn a profit till year 5, because it took them that long to kind of build up their projects, to make their own animals, to build their brand.
Infrastructure.
And then in the meanwhile, they were both working full-time jobs, right? Kyle and Crystal.
Yeah.
They were both like, I forgot what they do. They're teacher. One of them is a teacher.
They've had different
jobs.
Yeah.
And then anyway, but they were working full-time and just enjoying this as a hobby until they turn a profit. And I think they still work full-time and still just
they do
this as a hobby, right?
Yep.
But they were making decent money at one point. And so yeah, it's one of those things where that's probably the better route, is just that you're working and you're doing this on the side, which I do think, AJ, that a lot of people are doing that. They are working and they're doing this on the side.
I mean, I think that's what most people should do.
Yeah.
I think that doing this full time is a very, very hard thing to do.
I remember taking a poll about this, AJ.
Yeah. Most people don't want to do it full time.
Yeah. You and I are probably, I mean, you jumped in full time like several years ago, but before that you were working, making decent money doing this part time, right? Doing this part time and having a full time job outside of this.
Yep.
So, yeah. But just expectations and having an understanding that it's just going to take a while to get to a certain level and point. And some things you just can't rush. I tried. So.
And it just takes so much work. I mean, you can speak to it, witnessing witnessing, I guess, the difference of the stuff that you and I have both done in the last 3 to 4 years. I mean, it's an incredible amount of work to actually do this full time.
Dude, it's crazy, man. It's crazy. So here's the thing.
It's the hardest thing to do. Hardest thing I've done.
Man, like you and I just been grinding like crazy. But if this is funny, and I don't want to scare you guys off by this, but if I knew that it was going to take this much time, money, and effort, I probably wouldn't have jumped in so fully. But, and I shared this in a past vlog, that I always enter things with a little bit of being naive. Right? I think it's a pro and a con. It's a pro in the sense that I don't know what I'm getting myself into, and I like that I'm shielded by it a lot because I know it's gonna be a shit show to some degree.
Ignorance is bliss for you a little bit.
And that's how I operate. I'm not saying you should operate this way. That's just been my mentality, is that I've gone into almost all my careers and projects not knowing how to do certain things and just doing it because I'm driven so much by the passions of like, I can do this, and I love what I'm doing. I'm going to do it, and I figure it out. That's my skill set, is that I can figure it out. I'm passionate. I can figure it out. But looking back, and I'd be like, wow. Looking back at the past 4 years, I'm gonna be like, I don't know if it was the best decision. Obviously, it panned out. But not everything pans out, and so just you have to expect that it's going to be difficult to get to a certain level depending on where you want to go and how you want to be. So anyway.
Managing expectations.
Yes.
Okay, we're coming to the end of our time here.
Yeah.
So this kind of goes in line with that. So that
okay. So
I think this is kind of the flip side to that coin, which is, originally when we were kind of floating this episode idea, I had this concept in mind where I wanted to kind of paint a picture of like somebody who succeeded and somebody who didn't in a 5-year time span.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, that's probably going to be hard to follow and complicated. But I think something that we see, a big reason why we wanted to make an episode like this is that I think this is an inherent pitfall in the reptile industry is not knowing this information.
Yes.
And then we see so many people exit the hobby quickly.
Yes.
So I think a lot of those exits could be avoided or could be lessened if some of these concerns were addressed. Understanding what you're getting into. If you understand what you're getting into, you either won't get into it,
yes,
or you will have proper expectations of what you're getting into.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of one of our last points here, was being kind of a negative thing, or a con could be being impatient and exiting the hobby quickly due to your expectations not being met or not having proper expectations.
Yeah. I mean, one common thing was one common thing that we've seen in the past several months, with the rise of Palm, is that people buying animals and then buying a lot of animals and then being overwhelmed by the care and then dumping it and just being like, I can't do this. That's one.
Yeah, going 0 to 200 animals in 2 months, and then
I'll just say, don't buy 100-pack animal geckos.
Don't buy 100 animals from anybody.
Don't buy those don't buy wholesale packs of 100 geckos if you've never had a gecko before. Or you only had a handful.
That's a fast track to being overwhelmed. So
I mean, I met, like you have like a couple thousand animals, right? I have like several hundred, and I think about the amount of work it takes to take care of these animals, and we can do it because we progressively ramped up to this level.
Yeah.
And for us, it's relatively easy, but it's not easy if you don't know what you're doing. I mean,
And if you don't have the systems in play, like
you're gonna be so stressed out.
If you don't have racks, if you don't have the ways to wash your cups, if you don't have ways to spray efficiently or water efficiently, like you'll just get killed.
You'll get killed. You're gonna have shed issues. You're gonna have animals die.
And I think you'll have like a mental cloud over you of just like being overwhelmed.
Yes, it's interesting because again, this goes to like studying and learning and watching our episodes and learning from other breeders, what it takes to care for these animals. So when we look at the thing, it's relatively easy to care for, but to scale it, it's very difficult if you don't know what you're doing. That sounds really obvious, but people still do it. We got to warn you about that. Just a few animals at a time and ramp up slowly until you have your care dialed in. And it transforms over time as you have 5 animals over 100 animals. Your care will be different. So
Yep, and learning that doesn't happen overnight. I mean, even me, like I remember, you know, when I went from, I forget what the number is. I know I've said it. I've probably said a different number every time I've said this, but after a certain point, you know, maybe 300 or 400 total animals, it changed, you know, like the way that I viewed things, like understanding that, oh man, I can't just use, you know, 5 different kinds of cups. I've got Gatorade caps. I got this, I got that, I got that. It's like, I should probably have one kind of cup for this size of gecko for consistency and how I do these things. And I think once you get to a level where you have more animals, having that mindset of kind of putting those systems in play is super helpful. But if I was going to give advice to my younger self, I would say, now that all that information is relatively accessible, implement those things earlier.
Yeah, I agree.
Because then it's not like, because the way that a lot of people do it is they kind of do it very piecemeal together until they reach this breaking point where they're like, I'm dying over this care, and like, I just like can't do this. And they can't, then babies start to hatch and they just like crash and burn. And so it's like, if you actually implement systems early on that make things more straightforward for you from a care perspective, where you can take good care of your animals and manage the collection, it's a much more natural progression.
So you have to,
versus like a crash and then you have to self-evaluate and then figure it out again.
So this goes back to understanding, are you just a hobbyist or are you like breeding for a business? It's going to change how you care for things and even your mentality of being okay with certain aspects of the care and the breeding, you know, whereas like some hobbyists will frown upon that we have these in container store bins, you know, and then having to deal emotionally with like, I'm going to get canceled, you know, like you just have to know and understand who you are, what you want to be. And there's progression, right? But trying to get there quicker so that you'd be like, okay, I'm going to operate like this. This is how I'm going to operate. This is who I am. And just roll with it. The quicker you get there, the less stress you'll be about kind of that transition of like, oh, like I want to do all bioactives though. Like, if you can do all bioactives, but then you're going to have a very small collection, and you just have to be okay with that. You know, you can't have 100 breeders in bioactives and think that you're going to care for that in 40 hours a week. You know, it's very difficult. So you'll find all those things quickly as you expand and breed and see the level of care that's needed. Dude, you and I work day in and day out, feeding and cleaning these things, pulling eggs. We're just always on the phone talking because while we do all these chores and tasks, right? It takes a lot of work. So.
Yeah, because we're working on this stuff all the time, but we love it. You know,
we love it. This is our job. This is our job, essentially.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. What are we going out on, Harry?
All right. Let's do one more don't, and then we'll end with a happy note. Is that cool?
Yep. Let's end on
because we don't want to end with Debbie Downer. Okay. So one don't is, and before we started recording, you and I were talking a little bit about some of these things in terms of, whether or not we've been involved in some of these things as well, and we have, and I think these are things that we're trying to adjust and learn from, right? So things that were negative towards us were, sometimes there are things that were drama related, which I don't think we're not like very outgoing drama related in the sense that we don't publicize things necessarily.
Yeah, but we've been accused of being cliquey or different.
We've been accused of being cliquey, and then even now being accused of being two-faced. And people that may or may not watch the pod anymore, like saying certain things behind our backs. And I think I was talking to you about this. I think there's some truth to that, and so basically so the don't be there's multiple things, but don't drag sellers, don't drag buyers, don't participate in drama, don't be too emotional about the hobby and people, and don't let it get into your head. There's a lot of don'ts here. Sometimes if you're overly negative, people can sense your demeanor and they'll not be drawn to that, right? So how do we sum that up, AJ? I think there's a lot of like just a ball of the personal aspect of the hobby when it comes to relationships and drama. And
I think the thing you need to do is you need to stay in your own lane, and you need to focus on running the best business you can, and taking the best care of your animals that you can. And to a lot of the other stuff, I think you got to kind of stay out of it, to be honest.
And I think you and I are working on being pretty good about that as much as we can. For the last several months, we realized that, sometimes we're just negative also amongst, friends and stuff. And so now we don't have any friends. And
easy adjustment. Just don't have any friends. No.
By the way, guys, there are 0 clicks now. AJ and I are friends. AJ has more friends than I do at this point in this hobby. AJ is my only friend.
Okay. It's okay.
No, I'm kidding.
There's nothing wrong with that.
No, we have friends.
But I think the thing is, just in general, is like, and this is anything in life, but just like stay in your lane. Don't involve yourselves in things that you don't need to be involved in. And I mean, the reason why we're here is because we love animals, and a lot of people that do this are creative. They want to paint with the canvas that is a gecko, and they want to express their creativity in that. Focus on that. Focus on the animals, focus on your customers, and you'll be all right.
And then just jumping in briefly, sometimes we'll get messages of like people asking about other breeders, and then I literally I don't want to be involved in any of that, like it's just
like people will DM me, oh, did you see this? And I'm like, don't care.
And I know and I know it's tempting because I've done it and I've been involved in it.
Yeah, for sure. Me too.
I'll say certain things about certain things I'm seeing, and then I'll feel shitty about it afterwards. And then, and I think this is where kind of, being, I just don't like that for myself. It's something that I need to improve on. And so you and I have done our best to try to just stay out of all of it and just stay in our own lane. Like if there's drama, oh well, and I'll say that has really helped our businesses because we focus, right?
Yeah.
We're no longer involved in our heads emotionally about other breeders, about what they're saying about us, what others are saying about each other.
Yeah.
And it's been a much better place when we're there.
To kind of have the blinders on and
dude, it's really been day and night, I feel like. Yeah, and then, customers come up and we just help them. We have more time to help customers. We have more time to be creative with where we want to take our businesses, how to operate more efficiently. And it just feels like a breath of fresh air this season to be like, I feel like we're busier than ever. And yet at the same time, we have so much more going on and a lot more of a positive outlook with what's to come.
Yeah.
And
sure.
and it's thanks to kind of staying out of the negativity personally, and outside of just externally in the hobby as well. So
yeah. So our
so
last
how do we
point,
end? How do
our
we
last
end?
point. It's a simple do, which is have fun.
Have
And
fun,
that, I mean, and that might sound cliche or whatever, but the reality is that if you're new in this hobby, the beginning phase is so fun. You get to learn all about these animals, their care, the genetics. You get to, it's like every day, it's like, I have a little 2-year-old boy, and every day he's learning something new.
Yeah.
That's you right now in the gecko hobby if you're new. So just embrace it and enjoy it, and
stay positive.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So have fun along the way. This is the time when you learn the most info, and just enjoy yourself.
Yeah, people with that demeanor of just like wanting to learn, they're positive, they don't care about the drama. Like that's what I'm drawn to, and I hope that we are that to you guys. As we kind of grow in that, we're learning too. We're not
for sure.
we're not the best examples, but we're learning and we're trying to be better. So I think that's important. Just the aspect of growth, wanting to grow. So
yeah, for sure.
Cool. So yeah, we're long overdue on an episode, and here's one. Do we have anything coming up, AJ? I know we talked about.
There'll be future stuff with food for sure.
Okay. We still need to do part 2. I know we delayed that a little bit, which is fine.
But that's kind of get more information. Important.
Yes. And and then we'll have another live Q&A. I know a bunch of people had some questions that they brought up, and I say, oh, wait till we have this next Q&A, then just bring it up there. And so there, and
so we'll have that. More to come.
Are we?
I think this episode is just important because it's almost a little bit of a. I just felt like I wanted to have a place to send people that ask a lot of these questions, because I'm getting these questions a lot.
Yeah,
and
which is good.
It's good, and I think that having a place or an episode where people can learn. And if you're an established breeder and you listen to this, you might have made it 10 minutes into this and be like, I don't need any of this. But if you did listen to it, I mean, comment on this and tell us, like, were we on? Were we off? Do you have the same experience with some of these things? Would love to hear that from our fellow established.
Yeah, we'll do our best to listen. Yeah. So, cool. So next episode, hopefully next week, 2 weeks.
Yeah. Yep. In the next 2.
Yeah. Apologies though that we're a little bit off schedule in terms of the routine aspect of it, but we'll.
The good news is Harry and I have been working on a lot of stuff. You'll see. You guys will like. So
you'll see a lot of stuff come out this season from us. And I think hopefully it'll be well received and it'll be good. So it'll be very helpful, I feel like, for everybody in the hobby.
Yeah, hopefully. So,
yeah. Cool. Awesome. We'll close out. And any last words, AJ? Words of wisdom? No. Any what do we used to call it?
Like plugs?
Plugs. Any plugs?
No. Yeah. If you're watching this, you already probably know who we are. So
well, Zeros Geckos, HAD Reptiles, find us on Palm Street, find us on IG.
Find us on our websites. Yeah.
Thanks for getting us to 2,000 follow-up subscribers. It took 3 years.
Grinding it out.
Awesome. Yeah. Cool. Right. We'll see you guys on the next one. Thanks, AJ. And feel free to leave all your comments below, things you've learned and experienced. We're excited to hear from you guys too. So we'll see you guys on the next one.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.